Welcome back to the Writer's Wardrobe. I have another guest on this week, but it's one of my characters, not a real person, unfortunately. Anyway, how about you introduce yourself?
I am Sir Screecher the Sound.
Screecher, it's good to finally have you on the show. You must have been mentioned a half-dozen times at least.
Good things, I hope.
Some good, some hilarious. We heard about your fight with the goblin, for instance.
Aye, that was a cruel hazing for a young fellow.
We also heard about some of your other youthful endeavours. You saved Casserot's life on the streets.
We became fast friends after that, formed a band.
Screecher and the Wailing Banshees.
Screaming Banshees.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where wailing came from.
Likely because banshees typically make a wailing sound.
So why was it called the Screaming Banshees?
Well, banshees wail and carry on until they're aggravated. Then they scream. That's what my backup singers sounded like. If you've ever heard Jacoby after a few pints, you'll know.
We had Jacoby Brennan on the show last week. He sang some new material he'd been working on.
Was it good?
It was filthy to the point of obscene. Needless to say, I hope he never finishes it.
I thought he would have sung The Wicked Busty Lady. It was our biggest hit, after all.
I've only ever heard of that song, but if it was a success, I find it hard to believe that Jacoby wrote the thing after last week.
He didn't write the bloody thing, I did.
You're the third person that's told me that. I find it difficult to believe any of you at this point.
Not only was I the lead singer, I was also the songwriter.
But you can't read.
I can still write songs. Just because they're on my brain instead of parchment doesn't mean I haven't written them.
I think some people would disagree with you, but let's move on.
It's no different from all the stories you've completed in your head but never written down.
Let's move on, I said.
To what?
I'm hoping you might give us a chance to hear this song you've all written.
I sing for coins or for wine. You do not have either.
How about for honour? We can't have you upstaged by that nitwit Jacoby. He may be the Duke and a bit of a clown, but he performed.
Not happening.
Fine then. Tell me a bit about your latest adventure. You've been tracking the Duke down since his disappearance, as I understand it.
Something like that, but to tell the truth, I'd take any excuse for life on the road. This has been the most memorable 6 months of my life.
And do you have company?
Well, the most welcome company, and my best friend these days, is my horse Jugsy. He always gives the wisest looks.
You don't get lonely? I can't imagine the horse offers the best conversation.
You do notice it, of course. Very recently I came into contact with another knight called Gilroy. Hell of a man. Complete opposite to myself. No drinking for Gilroy, oh no. No tangents, no side quests, no fun to the man at all. He doesn't have an ounce of fat on him either. He must be very cold sleeping outdoors at night. But he's company, and I feel we balance each other out. If he'd been on the road for 6 months, he'd have gone 3 times the distance I have. That's practical if you have an urgent quest.
I might have him on next week then.
If he's not too busy on his rigid schedule. It's usually best to listen to him. Don't tell him I said that.
Really?
Well, there's a reasonable amount of stretch and bend to a knight's oath. One could argue that fighting anything that needs fighting fulfills the role of protecting the innocent. Gilroy is very much down that line. I argue that protecting the innocent covers a much broader market.
Well, that makes sense, I suppose.
For example, Gilroy and I were entering a town. I forget the name. The townsfolk were digging a well and doing a piss-poor job of it. Gilroy voted that the Duke's missingness took priority. I voted that the people did. If they can't dig a well, they can't get water. They could die. We can't be protecting the innocent if we allow them to die of thirst. So I dismounted and lent a hand.
How did you decide? Sounds like the vote was 50-50.
Oh, the votes don't matter. Gilroy has to do what I say.
Why?
I'm not telling.
I'll just ask Gilroy next week then.
He's sworn to secrecy.
Brilliant. Anyway, tell me what happened with the well digging. You said it was best to listen to Gilroy anyway, so I assume something went wrong.
My entire adventure is a collective of things going wrong, Loomis. Regardless, I took the shovel from the exhausted peasant, moved down into the hole they'd dug, which had a puddle of water in it for some reason, and thrust the shovel in.
That's usually how one digs.
Turns out the well was over a sunk hole.
You mean a sinkhole?
It was sunk once I was done with it. That single thrust of the shovel was enough to set it loose.
Well, that's good, isn't it? You didn't have to dig very much after that, I bet.
Their entire village dropped 10 feet into a muddy crater.
Wow.
I pay a little more attention to Gilroy now, not because he has the right of it, but because I cause less damage when I avoid helping people.
That sounds like a good note to end on. Thank you, Sir Screecher, for the tale and for coming to the show. This has been the Writer's Wardrobe.